Hey everyone, this is the Kubeflow trainer call on 15th of April. As always, we're going to record this call and we're going to publish on YouTube, and we follow the CNCF code of conduct. So please be welcoming to each other. Um, as always, like we start this call with a quick intro. Maybe any new folks here on the call who just want to say hi to the community, want to introduce yourself before we get started. Yeah, I see a few new faces here. So if you wanna, like just unmute yourself or just, use chat to say hi, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll get started.
So I'm Vaishnavi. I'm part of Nutanix AI team. We have been following Kubeflow Trainer for a while, and we want to integrate it in our product soon. So yeah, hi. Happy to contribute more. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for joining. It's definitely great to have you here.
Yeah.
Um, Anyone else want to say hi?
Yeah, I'm Henry, also part of the Nutanix AI team. Happy to contribute.
Welcome, Henry. Anyone else? All right. So I guess then we definitely have a few topic today talk about more specifically we want to talk about the caps around automatic GPU resources, the one that we announced previously. Just before I jump to this, I want to, quick give a short kind of overview where we are right now. So just before KubeCon, we released Todo 2. I think it was very successful release, I would say. Like I see a lot of engagement, a lot of interest within the project, especially in like since we recently introduced support for Flux and XGBoost and also like, all those things around integration with Hugging Face transformers. So I'm pretty, like exciting to see how folks are really adopting the trainer moving forward. So for those who don't really know, we publish this GitHub release notes, and I think we also have the blog post. So the blog post in the kubeflow.org where we have this announcement for Todo 2. So if you want to see the overview of all the features, the recent runtimes we supported, and like just try this out, please check this blog post and let us know if you see any problems and or bugs. Like otherwise, we need to like we will focus on Todo 3 relatively soon. So I think we have like few definite topics we need to talk about in terms of roadmap and the next release. But any kind of questions so far for Todo 2, like any maybe successful migrations for customers who already kind of try to use Trainer and deploy this for, in production? From my side, like we kind of I think identify a few problems with SDK. I think we recently published the patch release for 0.3. So one of our customers actually found the problem that since we introduced the breaking change in trainer into the two specifically to like runtime patches API and the removal for non-proc per node, the previous version of SDK just not functional. So we had to recently publish the Kubeflow SDK release the patch fix for 0.3.1, which actually has this the bug fix for trainer. So if there are any other issues like you see and we need to kind of you have a hot fix for to the two, like let us know. Like I saw some of the open issues in the GitHub. Like if you think this is will be valuable for us to move them, like have a hot fix, we can consider to have to the 2.1, for example, in the next couple of weeks. Any questions so far for the release, or we can move on?
I had one question. It's not specific to 2.2 release, but so I was experimenting with Kubeflow Trainer, and like if there is any underlying pod failure, then the failure message and status conditions is not always propagated to the job set and the train job. So is this by design, or are there any plans to uh, like have the conditions and status updated of the train job?
Yeah, what kind of failure you don't see being propagated? Like when your pod is failing?
Yeah, so if there's a problem with the trainer
Mm-hmm.
image or something.
Yeah, yeah. So it's actually a good question. So like the jobs, so because job set using jobs, and by
Mm-hmm.
default, job has the pod, the I think it's called the API back off policy. Like
Yes.
yeah, basically
It.
like if you wanna disable restarts, you
Mm-hmm.
can set it to 0 and disable restarts completely. Which means like when your pod is failing, your job will be failing, and then your job set also will be failing if you're using the one replicated job, for example, for PyTorch. Have you tried to set up the back off limit parameter on your job
No,
API?
it was by default, but even then the it would fail,
Mm.
but the would the reason be also updated? I will check it out, but
Hmm.
not sure.
Yeah, so yeah, by default, when the job is restarting,
Uh,
job set doesn't really take the status, so it's still, saying the job is active. But when job is failing, you should see that the job set also failing, and then the train job also should be failing. So we do propagating the status all the way to the train job. So theoretically, if you set the backoff limit to 0, when your pod is failing, you should be able to see that your train job is also failing.
yeah, so status was propagated, but not the
Mhm.
reason and the conditions,
Oh,
like why
reason.
the pod failed.
Yeah. And what kind of reason you're looking for to be propagated?
Um, Whatever is the pod event
Mm.
that
Hmm.
should be propagated. So yeah, wanted to check like is it by design or
Yeah. I think this is something definitely we can talk, but like I don't think job and job set right now, propagating the reason for pods all the way to
yeah,
the
job set
underlying
doesn't do
resource.
that. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Any kind of like, like this particular reason you like particular request you want to see the reason why pod is failing because sometimes it's really hard to understand, right? Like, what's
Yeah,
happening.
we were brainstorming on that, like how can we implement it, but it would be pretty difficult for multi-node setup, or if there's a multi-pod, then what specific failure to propagate. But we will think
Mm.
or more on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's definitely talk more. Like I think, like the understanding the pod specifically for training part of things, like
Mhm.
it's really hard to understand what's happening, and this is why share up, we started this, work stream around trainer status to better
Mhm.
understand what's happening with your like, logs, etc. Because like in Kubernetes, usually, when your job is running, it does not necessarily mean that the PyTorch is running. Because
Yes.
sometimes, like it's really hard to understand from a Kubernetes perspective what's happening with the underlying application. Um, and sometimes, usually users go to the logs and check the logs and then, they understand what's happening.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. But if we think that the reason might be helpful, we can definitely talk on this more.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. So then I guess quickly for the roadmap. So I know like, we've been discussing this for a while. I think over the past 2 months, actually 3 months almost. I've added like, a few items that I guess Vasilis and Rob you suggested around observability. I think Abhijit also suggested to add the Grafana integration and the Prometheus one to the observability section. Any kind of additional topics we want to discuss or you think this roadmap pretty like looking good? um just I can give you a high level overview, but any thoughts on this? Yeah, you can.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
So as far as I can remember, we discussed about NBL, NDB 200 or 300 support
Mm-hmm.
discussions
That's
in
right.
this roadmap here, right?
Yep, yeah, that's right.
Um, so if I remember correctly, the NBL domain should be handled by the other driver side, right?
Yep, yeah, that's right.
In that
So I
case,
think,
what is the responsibility in Q4 trainer side?
yeah, I think we talked a little bit about this with Rob last time, and with Ron. Yeah, with Ron. Like I think the outcome was eventually the Jira integration will go through workload API. But before we do have this, we might want to auto create compute domains if users want to opt into this feature. So I think the goal basically is like if you want to make sure that train job is can be scheduled appropriately on the GP200, we need to make sure that we create compute domains when the job is submitted. And all of the configurations and compute domains will be automatically populated.
So
Yeah, good.
so so does the compute domain means NVIDIA provided the customer resource name,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, the one at NVIDIA maintenance and recently, they donated this to the Kubernetes 6, right?
Oh, so in that case, so you mean so computer domain is managed by NVIDIA DRL driver,
Yep,
right?
that's right. Yep, yep.
Hmm, I
Yeah,
see.
we're not going. I can already share recordings like from our call. I think we discussed it again before KubeCon. But the compute domains will be fully managed by NVIDIA driver, DRA driver, and they still will be there. I think there are kind of open discussion happening on DRA side who should create compute domains because right now we have resource claim template and we do have this resource compute domain. And I think previously the compute domain was kind of abstraction on top of resource claim template, but I know like they're doing some discussion to refactor this, but that might take some time, like for on the DRA side. Uh,
So
yeah,
why
sorry.
not in jobset side? I mean, so can we create compute domain resource in jobset side instead of trainer side?
hmm Yes, I mean this could be one of the options, right? Like I know that Kevin was also you also hear like I know we have the discussion on DRA. I guess like I see two parallel tracks, right? Like one of the track is to enable DRA via workload API, like all the things they do with the workload API scheduling. And at the same time, before this is ready, we can give some customers who actually want to use train job on the GB200 a way to do so via compute domains. At the same time, I agree with you, Yuki, we can push this to the job set. The question whether we want to push this to the job set, and we have a customers who actually want to have this in the job set right now. Like by right now, I mean before I would say October, November timeframe. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's similar problem for workload creation,
yeah.
responsibility, and
One of the yeah.
currently,
Yes,
so
sir. Go ahead.
currently you you are aiming to create both workload and compute domain resources should be created by trainer side based on application command arguments or resource requirements limit specification, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think we like actually. So Ron is working on the cap. I think like he is probably like probably propose something like maybe in 2 to 3 weeks time frame. So maybe by the time we can talk about this and like how we can make this possible, right? Because the goal was to have some short term wins. Like for the short term, we do have a plugin which will create compute domains, but eventually we can, like migrate to the more kind of, like a long-term support file, for example, resource claim templates, right? Um, because the resource claim templates will depend also on the workload of our scheduling integration, if that makes sense to you.
Is it true? As far as I know, resource claim template is decoupled by workload, what area scheduling. It's
Yeah.
independent functionality, right?
Yeah, that's right. As far as I know, like, and we should definitely talk more to the Google guys, but the DRA integration will eventually go to the workload API. So
That's
that,
not true.
oh, okay,
No,
okay.
no, it's not. That's not true. Though in the case you need DRA to share multiple, like DRA sharing multiple nodes, then you would use a pod group. But if every pod needs its own, GPU access, you can still use resource claims without the workload API.
Okay.
So compute domain is for the use case of pod groups. So I would expect eventually people using compute domains to span multiple nodes would probably want to use the pod group resource claim template, but not every case of DRA has to use that.
hmm
Yeah,
So
that's same understanding as Kevin. So the computer domain and the resource claim template contribute only pod group level scheduling and or topology area scheduling to identify which topology domain should be selected for job subgroup or entire group. So the turning back to the main question, so in that case, so why do we need to consider this computer domain creation in train job side?
Sorry, I have heard my name or job set call, not my name, but I think that generally the concern was that the there is some issues with compute domains. I think aren't were not designed in the way that the DRA folks really would have preferred. Like a compute domain creates a resource claim template, and the idea is that something has to streamline that. And right now, it is required that you have to manually create that. And the reason why I think we were discussing with John from the Google side about having this created in the trainer is to streamline, for the Python users to not have to know about compute domains. And that's honestly why I think we were thinking trainer could go forward with this as like an alpha to kind of meet their customer needs now versus waiting for the compute domain and the pod group stuff to trickle down over years.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, when the compute domains will go through pod groups, like we don't know. Like, it could be, November, maybe January, right? Because it really depends on the Kubernetes release cycle.
Oh, so will computer domain will computer domain be managed by core Kubernetes DRA functionality instead of NVIDIA DRA driver, right?
No,
In the
it will
future?
be
No?
NVIDIA DRA driver. Compute domain was something NVIDIA created to kind of help streamline multi-node resource claims. But they're not proposing that to be in core Kubernetes. So it's an NVIDIA DRA driver, though the NVIDIA DRA driver was donated to the Kubernetes community. So it's not as NVIDIA specific anymore, but it is only for the NVIDIA DRA driver.
I see. So currently it's vendor specific resource. Okay.
Yeah, it's a separate API that only comes from the NVIDIA DRA driver.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for answering that. So let's discuss about how we should support compute domain or DRA in trainer side as part of this roadmap issue.
Yeah,
So
let's have a talk with this with Ron. Like, I agree with you. Like, but just quick question, like, to Kevin, like, when you say like it's not necessary to have a pod groups, like, they don't expect that everything will go through pod groups and workload API. Like, even for like for workload which doesn't require multiple pods. Like, why they don't want to use pod group API for this?
For multiple, they would, but I think the compute domains is for the IMEX channel, but I don't know if that's all you need for DRA requests. Also, for A100s or H100s, they don't have compute domains. So you would use for the normal GPU requests that people are doing, you could still use a resource claim template. For every pod would need to have their own request to a GPU anyway.
Yep.
And so the compute domain and the pod group is more about when you want a single resource claim sharing multiple pods. It's a pretty advanced use case. It's kind of not really done at all in Kubernetes right now, other than people using DRA. So,
Okay. Okay.
but
I mean,
yeah,
like, yeah. I just want to say, like, if the pod group can be used even for the single pods, right? I mean, theoretically for the workloads, right? Like, it's not necessary you can have, like, more than one pod to use a pod group API. Like, maybe we should talk more on this, with the, batch community and the Google folks. But like, I was thinking that all of the workloads creating on Kubernetes will go through workload API eventually in the pod groups. Because like what is the reason to, like have a multiple ways to use DRA, topology aware scheduling, right? And other features which VAS can provide.
Yeah, I mean that's not my. There
Okay.
isn't a way to do that, but yeah, unfortunately, the pod spec has resource claims,
Okay.
and
Yeah, I
like,
understand.
so I don't. It's yeah, it's definitely something I think we have to think about on Q side also, because yeah, we
Hmm.
can have people specifying either pod groups, but also if the pod themselves request a resource claim template, that doesn't that's it's still valid because it's part of the V1 API of a pod spec, and the
Yeah.
pod group is a little bit more advanced. So yeah, I think there's some we have to think through a lot of that as these things come out more and more.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And we should keep it back for compatibility, right? For V1 API. All right. I mean, I think it's fine. Definitely, I think I agree with you. Okay, let's definitely follow up for this. Like again, like it's not kind of we need to think deeply on like what we can give for the short term to the users if they really wanted to have it right now. And we have this opportunity for alpha to iterate, right, and to break some of the features we gonna have, right. Um, I think we should
Yeah.
talk more. Yeah. Any other things like I think on the beta gradation, we should definitely talk more on the when we want to have a timeline for beta gradation and my expectation also to gradate job set to beta and to V1. I also propose this to the batch community. Um, any kind of timeline from you guys, like any thoughts when we can have a beta API being there? Um,
Did you get any feedback about the job set beta graduation
yeah, I
in
mean,
job set community?
um, two of the job set maintainers are here, right? I mean, like we definitely need more help there. I think that so the job set API it's already considered as V1 from Google side, and it's kind of like the major kind of like thing we need to deal with. Like if we decide to break some of the APIs, we need to get alignment, I guess, from their customers if they're okay to break it once. Like my feeling the job set should go to V1 no matter like, how many customers we have, because if we really want to, emphasize the stable API, this is used in production, we should similar to leader workers that have this V1, but we need someone, who can also support this, right? Um,
So did you Kevin discuss about the job set beta graduation with Abdullah in Amsterdam? He exists in Amsterdam.
I never saw him there. I haven't really been. I haven't been able to talk to the job set Google folks for a while now. I'm not. I think like post KubeCon, everyone's been busy or out. We probably should follow up with them, but I haven't even got them to respond on any of the issues I'm tagging them on. So we'll see. I'm hoping people come back.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah,
We
Abdullah, I haven't really been able to get Abdullah's input on job set for a while now. I mean, he is still on it, but I understand that he is very, very busy, and I don't think he is working too much on job set now. He's more on the LLMD side.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I guess we should negotiate with Abdullah so that we can graduate the job set API version to B1. Otherwise, maybe so we cannot graduate the API version to B1,
I think
right?
everyone's supportive of it. It's just someone needs to do it. Like if somebody wants to do it, that I think we got the go ahead. It's just no one's really. I don't
do we
have a
think?
push from my end to do this right now.
Mhm. Do we have any buy-in, like, buy-in from them that we're going to break APIs during the migration? That's the API will
I mean,
be
we
discussed.
can't. The goal was
Mhm.
to have conversion webhooks and do the full like V1 alpha 2 and V1 and have conversion webhooks and do all the stuff that Q did for V1 beta 1 to V1 beta 2. And
Okay.
it's, and I know we had somebody from the Google side that was leading it, but I think that the interest in doing it is pretty low since it's effectively V1. So it's been not people's priority.
Let's try to call out for some. So we want to skip the bet, right, for job set and go directly to V1, right?
Yeah, I think that was the goal.
Okay.
I think if we're going to do this migration, we want to do it. We want to do it once and then not have another one because I don't think the Google folks are interested in having a
Mhm.
beta of this. It's already
But
effectively alpha, it's effectively GA for them.
okay. But we still want to keep the support for two APIs, right? If you want to push new features to job set. Or we don't.
I
Like
think we
similar.
want to make sure that V1 Alpha 2 is still served. I don't know if we need to add new features to V1 Alpha 2,
Okay.
but that's something, I mean, we'd have to figure out with the plan on that one. We'll see. Sorry, I haven't
Okay.
been able to follow up with them in a while, so we can try again.
Yeah, let's try to push them again. Like, we have some users who really want to see beta API. So we have like few folks from Nutanix. I think we talk a little bit about the beta graduation. Like, is it the blocker like for you guys to adopt train job, or you're just looking for like beta and V1 migration from us, um, like from the Nutanix side?
Yeah, actually, we want to use the stable version of Trainjob because we want to do GA of a feature with this. So
Mhm.
we were waiting for the graduation to beta and then planning to use it. Because if there are few changes in API later, then we would have to do the migration on our own. So
So for your platform, is it the hard requirements that the API should be V1 to adopt it and
yes.
to GA? Okay.
Y-
Yeah, then I guess it's a good signal for us to get this information and drive the signal right towards API graduation. So anyway, let's follow up for this. Like my hope is this year we can do something. Like my hope is again, as when as before, we will fully deprecate PyTorch jobs because again we already support all the similar job types like XGBoost jobs, PyTorch jobs, MPI jobs, JAX jobs, right? So we need to have this migration story for users who've been using, PyTorch jobs and TF jobs for the last 7 years, right? Um,
So
okay.
this is just a comment. At the worst case, so if jobset side cannot provide a conversion mechanism after B1 or beta API graduations, we might need to host conversion mechanism inside of the trainer side from alpha to B1 or from alpha to beta API. This is just a comment. At this worst case. So
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And it's like basically maintain this on the trainer side, right?
yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think it's fine. Let's definitely follow up with this like more and discuss it more. And I mean, my hope is we will push it, towards this like maybe in a couple of quarters and see what we can do by summer or by Q4. Um, all right. Anything else before we jump to the proposal from Vasilis? All right. So I guess like then, Vasilis, do you want to share your screen or like how do you want to give an overview like what we've been
Yeah,
discussing?
yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
Just one moment. Should be this, right? Can you see the document?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
can
can
see
see.
your document. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Now, I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll give you a super high description of what this thing is because it can sound a little bit magic. So the idea is, you know how it's difficult to configure the GPU requirements of a job. If you ask for too few, you run out of memory, you get an exception, which is very nice, and it just breaks everything. It could happen immediately, it could happen within an hour, it depends on what you're running. If you request too many GPUs, you may have like a large queuing time, especially if you're using a multi-tenant cluster, and that's probably the case because nobody has 15 GPUs lying around. If you're using multiple GPUs, you're probably part of an organization, you're probably competing with resources with your colleagues, right? So then, and also the other thing is, typically you're requesting GPUs as a power of two. So a one-off mistake is double the amount of GPUs at the least. Now, what that means is, depending on what you're trying to get out of configuring your GPUs, which is probably maximize throughput if you're a user or if you're an admin of a cluster, a platform engineer, your goal is probably to maximize the use of the cluster. And these personas typically have a little bit of conflict. You have some objective. There's ways where you can optimize the GPU resources for your jobs based on an objective. Scientists are building optimizers for ages. They know how to do it. So what if instead of asking the users or the platform engineers to enforce quotas, what if we had a way to automate this process? Now, the scary part here, or the important part here, is that we don't want Kubeflow trainer to be the software that changes the resources. We don't want to bake policies inside Kubeflow because coming up with the absolute amazing policy is difficult, maybe even impossible, at least for every single different workload out there. But if you focus on a specific type of workload, there's ways, profiling, historical data, canary runs, there's many ways, heuristics, to come up with a sort of automated process that, given some kind of a workload definition, you can automatically give a good enough recommendation of resources. Does that does that make sense in terms of what we should be working towards? Kubeflow provides the intelligence in the platform for building plugins, but it's not the actual thing that decides the policies, that decides the actual values for the resources. Does that make sense?
But from my understanding, is it that this is the part of the plugins, right? This the
Exactly.
heuristic mechanism, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So the idea is you just give the tools for people to develop these, let's call them plugins. And then Kubeflow is the thing that translates the recommendation of a plugin to actionable, to changes on the train job object. So for example, if you deployed Kubeflow in an environment which is managed by Kubeflow will ensure that the recommendation of the plugin is correctly applied. If you've deployed Kubeflow on just a vanilla Kubernetes environment, in which Kubeflow is the thing that just creates the job set objects and there is no other manager for suspending and unsuspending, Kubeflow will ensure that while the recommender is producing the recommendation, while the recommender is patching the train job, the original object that the user created doesn't start, because that can have unwanted side effects. Because imagine if you start a job and then it starts running while you're computing the resources, and then you change the resources, there's a chance that the job has produced some kind of a checkpoint. And then when you try to start with a different number of GPUs, it's just not compatible with the checkpoint. Like you can see, there could be problematic scenarios like that. So the the responsibility of Kubeflow is not to decide the actual values, but to ensure that plugins can do that action in a safe way, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so yeah, I think we need to basically build a protocol between the controller and the plugins, right?
That's exactly, yes, thank you.
Yeah,
That's the word. It's a protocol. Thank you. This is the
yeah,
right way to phrase it. This is a
yeah.
protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So I started writing a kept, and I have received many useful both questions and also feedback and suggestions. So please, if you have like a use case, if you have an idea, if you can think of potential problems, just leave a message on the cap, or maybe even drop a suggestion. I'm gonna scroll just a little bit past the user stories. This is what I think we should try to get to. going back to what Andre just said about the protocol. So the protocol should be, I think, let's try to minimize the code that goes into Kubeflow, because this is like a kind of an MVP of sorts. Let's find the absolute simplest MVP that the community would be interested in using. Because if nobody wants to use this, like if this is too simple and nobody wants to use it, then there's no point in implementing it. That's dimension number one. Dimension number two is, if we make this extremely complex, then we might not be able to implement it, and thereby nobody will use it. So we have to balance this kind of two dimensions and find the thing that would work, good enough for people to try it out and then give us feedback and maybe improve it, against trying to implement something that's extremely complex and just doesn't work. So here, what I was thinking is that at the bare minimum, what you need is ideally a user creates a job, and because of the reason that you cannot have a single policy for determining the appropriate resources, maybe you have some kind of a catalog. Now, catalog is a scary word. It can be as easy as having a bunch of controllers in a namespace, which are exposing like a kind of label, and then you say, okay, use this controller with this specific label, right? So as a user, you hop on your namespace, you look at this catalog, you pick a plugin, and then you're creating a job. And in the job, you're literally just saying, I want to use plugin foo. At this point, there's a controller. This controller implements the logic of one of those plugins. And two of those things could be standardized to some extent. One of them is parsing, like parsing information out of the train job. So if we're talking about, for example, if we're talking about training an LLM model, you may want to parse which kind of dataset you're using, what kind of GPU model, the model name itself, parameters like the batch size, these kind of things. And then you have this sort of magic box in the middle. Now, this is the bit that performs the policy. Like, this is the bit that generates the resource recommendation. And then you have something that enforces the job recommendation. So for example, this patch job step, it could be literally like a Go function that uses the runtime patches API, which propagates this information from the recommender down to the train job object. And then at this point, the plugin is finished. It just says, okay, this is the patch. I finished working on this train job, maybe with like some kind of an annotation. And then you just have your standard train job reconciliation step, looks at the runtime patches. And I know we cannot patch the job set object, but we just like delete and recreate it. Like at the bare minimum, this is how I imagine this to work. There are some details like, okay, how do you interact with queue? Or actually, let's say we can limit the scope to just that. How do you interact with queue? I don't think I need to go into the details, but I'm sorry for scrolling fast, but I have like a flow here where basically,
It's a different job. Can I ask you this if you go back just for a sec?
yes,
I think
sorry.
I asked this question to Kevin, and the cap that was, which allows us to patch the job resources isn't better, which means we can theoretically, without deletion, the job set, update the resources, right? So this is repeatable.
No, unfortunately, I think job set doesn't allow you to patch anything right now.
Mhm.
So I have a separate issue for job set to actually leverage the KEP that I have. But right now my KEP is just for jobs.
Okay,
So
okay. Yeah, because the job template is immutable fully, right? We only relax this mutability for elastic job sets, right? We only start this to do so, right?
yeah, so yeah,
Mhm.
that's I have a separate issue for that one to given one now this is 1.36 is enabled. We can in theory do that, but
Okay. Okay.
Well, if that makes it through, I can imagine we can have like we can try using this version, like we can try using this API, and if it's not available, we just fall back to deletion and recreation. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think there's ways around that. Okay. Any other questions about at least the high level part? Good.
I
Now,
Yeah.
something I want to maybe ask a little bit more on is like the logic for like resource right sizing is very
Mhm.
black box right now. And
Mhm.
I guess that is maybe a little bit by design because I think it's very like organizational dependent, but like how like what's the plan for the for open sourcing the plugins?
Excellent question. We had exactly the same idea, right? Because we've been working on this for quite a while. So, okay, I'm also part of an organization, right? I work for IBM Research, and we have clusters, and we do have an actual use case here. We would like to automatically set the resources because we have clusters where many people go in, and they compete against each other, and eventually they complain because their queue time is too high or their throughput is too low, and then we're trying to make a way where you have like a fair system, right? Because if you have a fair system, then it's hard to complain, basically, as if you're a platform engineer. So we've actually implemented one of those plugins, and we did it for like the Transformers API that uses PyTorch. That's the best way I can describe it. There is an open source, it's called FMS HF tuning Python framework. It's a very thin wrapper over the Transformers API, and it's for inference. It's for fine tuning models. And so what we did is we ran thousands and thousands of profiling runs, and all of this is open source, like the framework we use for generating the dataset. The dataset itself, I have a feeling we're going to open source it soon. We've already definitely open sourced the model we built using this dataset. And then with that model, we basically wrapped it here. I implemented a controller around it. So now we have a controller. It just doesn't work for train jobs. It works for PyTorch jobs because that's what we had at the time, right? Now, this whole approach, anyone can follow. You can go on your own cluster. You don't have to run 10,000 points. You can run 10, right? If you're only using a specific, like a couple of models, you can do a couple of canary runs. And then okay, whenever I need to fine tune Llama, whatever, at this batch size, this is the best thing that I do for throughput. If I want to optimize for just enough GPUs so that I don't run out of GPU memory, this is the correct number of GPUs that I should use. You can do these things. And also, um, there's like open source projects where, although maybe they work for inference, like LLMD, Benchmark, they can give you like a kind of heuristic to calculate these numbers. Sorry, Andre, go on.
No, finish your point first.
But that's basically, so the real concern is exactly what Kevin mentioned. How can we make this useful for people that are not willing to implement their own plugins, right? That's basically what it boils down to, right, Kevin? Or they're unable because they don't have resources. I'm hoping like we can motivate people that building those plugins and open sourcing them is a good thing. In fact, we're thinking about even building like arenas where you can just submit your controllers and see how they fare. If you do that, maybe people will buy in, but that is the highest risk. Kevin, I agree with you. That's the highest problem with this approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I'm fine with that, but yeah, I guess obviously
Yeah. Mhm.
figure this out as we go.
So I guess from my understanding, so those recommenders, they're based on so you're not using LLMs, right? You're just using the classification models, right? Like which you train on the historical data, right? So is it like what type of, ML, what type of models you use for those recommenders?
Okay. First of all, I wasn't the one that built the recommender.
Okay.
I have like a very high level view. I did the other parts. I did the collection of a data set, more or less.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, my colleague built it, Daniel Lotito, and he used AutoGluon tab something.
Mm-hmm.
AutoGluon, I don't remember the exact thing, but a tabular model from AutoGluon.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the way it works is it's actually quite simple, but also I like it. It was very smart. It builds like the actual model he built, it doesn't produce the recommendation. It's actually a classifier. So it's
Mm-hmm.
classifying whether because the task we had in mind was minimizing the number of GPUs while not running out of GPU memory exceptions. So that was the task at the time, because that's what we
Mm-hmm.
wanted, but you can do other things. So it has a classifier where it says this specific configuration, like model A, butt size, whatever, this model max length, blah, 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 right? With this specific GPU. Is this going to run out of GPU memory or not? That's literally what the classifier is doing. And then he has like a list of candidates. He's iterating the candidates, and then the first one that doesn't run out of GPU memory says, okay, that's the recommendation. But
Mm-hmm.
you can do like, for instance, if you have a different task, like give me the recommendation for the highest throughput. The highest throughput is a little bit a bad objective, because then the highest throughput is always the maximum number of GPUs. But probably what you want is the highest throughput that also does something else, like the highest throughput at a reasonable cost or whatever. You can have another optimizer that does exactly that. But
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm.
that's what we're betting, right? I don't want this to sound like a magic thing. There is no magic. You can't get.
No, no, like I think it definitely makes sense. Like, basically, like like they fine tune the model based on the historical data, and like the model has been optimized to perform based on the data it knows about GPUs. It's necessarily knows about the networks and the parameters users set up before. I
Yes.
think I have maybe like a slightly another question. Like you said, like users should select the plugin. Do you think users actually need to do so, or we can do this for themselves, for example, in the runtime? Um,
Ah,
because
that
this
would
is
be
not necessarily
interesting.
what user needs to be know, right? User doesn't care what kind of, like automation used to how to configure resources and how to resize. Users just want to
Mhm.
make sure, like their jobs are running in the most optimal way, right? On them, like on available capacity.
I'll tell you where I was coming from. I was thinking, again, I was going for, if you will, maximizing the praise we get with the least amount of effort. This is the way I work. So what I was thinking is, it's probably difficult. Like, how will a user um, define their intentions, right? Because like for example, I can think of a user that says, I don't really care about this job. It can run like over the weekend. All I care is that it doesn't break. That's objective number one. Another objective would be, I have a paper that I have to submit next Tuesday. I need these results yesterday. Please just minimize the execution time of the entire job, which includes queuing time and execution and duration and training duration. And these are two competing policy objects. These are two competing objectives. I'm sorry.
Hmm. But it's more, yeah,
So
it's more of a approach. Yeah, good.
you see, this is what I was trying to think like, how do I match the intention of the user with something that I have in like different plugins that I have in a catalog? And then instead of trying to come up with a solution at the Kubeflow level, I just said, this is not my problem. This is my user's problem. I'll give them the tools. These are the plugins that either you or your platform engineer installed on your cluster. You can look at the descriptions, pick the one that works the best for you. It doesn't work, too bad. Pick another one, right? Yes,
Yeah, I
Antonio.
mean, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go, Anthony.
Just a quick comment on what you've described, like that kind of requirement that user would express, like you've done, feels like today a good job for an agent, like for an LLM agent, that and as long as you have the like MCP or whatever, like it's almost a skills because they are very good nowadays at coming up with solving or at least solving what you mentioned as how user provide their intent. Using now you can do it with natural language, and then generally, I mean, some models are pretty good at, and then using tool calls and some form of
This is a very
outputs.
interesting idea. This is very interesting because you know what I'm thinking. This sounds like a smart plugin. This sounds like I have a bunch of plugins in my catalog, and then this specific one says I'm not gonna be the one that does the recommendation. I'm gonna be the one that translates the intent of the user to one of the available plugins.
That could be that, absolutely. That translation layer between the intent of the user that oftentimes might not be as simple as to express, and then it translates into that second layer, you're right, of maybe more formalized expression language or DSL for doing what you want it to do.
Because I'm assuming if we were to have this kind of agentic, actually Andre is probably the best person to answer this question, but would it make sense in Kubeflow to have a component that itself is running a model for picking this, for doing this mapping? I don't think, does that even make sense?
Yeah, I think like what maybe like we can do here, those LMs, whether it's Sonnet LM, LMs from Anthropic or OpenAI, whatever they train it, they're pretty good in terms of understanding like what jobs I need to run, right? Because theoretically, like I can just pass all of my Python scripts to the LLM and ask about what like how many GPUs of GB200 I need to to efficiently train them without really using those
I see.
recommenders, right? I guess this is what probably Antonio is trying to say here,
Well,
right?
we could do both. Actually,
Yeah.
at the beginning, that was what Andre described was what I suggested. But if you feel like there is a need to have still an intermediate layer of as I said,
Hmm.
some sort of DSL for recommender, then it could work as well. Huh? But I think as long as the agent has the right tool to operate what he has and well get the information and then do some operation, as Andre said, like any fairly good model should be able to do it directly. Like you wouldn't need to have
Yeah.
the
I think we can definitely do both. So basically, like from my understanding, your plugins idea, like Vasilis, can also work with those LMs, right? Because again, like we
Exactly.
can, yeah.
It
I
could be
think the
this.
goal, yeah. Good.
Exactly like you said. And I never thought about it this far, but this box here, it could literally be exactly what you described. Like it receives the train job, it sends a request to Anthropic or what your Olama endpoint, your Anthropic endpoint, whatever, and then it gets the recommendation and just passes it on over here. And it
Yeah.
should work.
So I think the goal of all these proposals should be they don't need to worry about resources. We will set resources on behalf of you in the most optimal way, right? And like users just submit the jobs and they expect the jobs to be complete without worrying about how many GPUs I need to run the job, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, and still it would need to have some form of like MCP or stuff
Yeah.
like or CLI because in the constraint you've described, it has to know the available resources. So, for example, if Q is there, ideally it would be able to actually pick into Q or to pick into the available resources or that type of stuff. Like as much, it's all about context engineering in the end. Like so, as much, but to be able for the agent to make a good job, it would have to have all the information you assume that he
But
has
we
to have.
don't, yeah. Yeah, I just want to say we don't need to have a full agent here. Like what I want to say, we could just make an LLM's calls, right? Within the change of controller. Like,
Yeah, but you have. Yeah, it has to have the context for like coming up with all the context or the state of the system that you would
Yeah,
want
yeah,
it
yeah.
to resolve.
But
Yeah.
but the context is available. Context is available in the job that user submits, right? It could be
Ah,
the
well, no,
yeah.
I see what your question.
Mhm.
I don't think so. I don't think so because he
I
doesn't
think
have
I know where he's going.
the
And I agree with
Okay.
resources
both
that
of
the
you.
for example, yeah, but yeah, okay. But when you said like, for example, that guy that he wants to have the paper for yesterday, and he really wants to make it so probably if you are if the cluster has like 16 GPUs that are not used, let's go full steam ahead and use everything to do. While if there are, I don't know, like less resources available, it might find so I have that context, but. That was what I had in mind.
Can I get a stop at summarizing what you just said? I think, Antonio, you're saying we could get amazing recommendations if we didn't just take into account this box here where it says parse job. We also looked at the environment
Yeah,
that
yeah,
this job is
exactly,
about to run, right?
exactly. But that really
Good.
depends on what are the constraints you want to solve. But what I'm saying for it to be very general purpose, probably it would have to have the outer context as well. To if a user mention a constraint that's not in the job itself, but that comes from the cluster itself or whatever.
Perfect. This is exactly what I want to do and why I think we shouldn't do it. This is what I mean. What you're describing is an amazing policy. And if you think about it, it fits entirely into this box. So what we could do, like if we were to have this design implemented today, we could technically implement a plugin where, I mean, it parses the job just to get the train job information, right? So you have one of your parameters already known. The parameter is whatever this specific job is doing. And then inside this box, to generate the recommendation, as a first step, you have like an MCP server, you have your agent, and then you say to you give a tool that says, I'm gonna inspect, I don't know, like the cluster queue, if this thing is running inside a queue managed namespace. Or I'm going to, like if I have read access to the nodes API, I'm gonna look the capacity of individual nodes and I will provide this information to my LLM. We don't have to add it as part of the protocol. We can just say in the protocol, a train job, a controller must look at the train job. It can do whatever anything else it needs, and then in the end, it must give me a patch. Now, in this in-between step, you can look at the cluster, you can call the LLM that Andre and you mentioned, you can look at the cluster queue, you can do whatever you want. We don't have to make the protocol more complex. We only have to give like a documentation to someone and say, okay, these are the things you can do. And these are some interesting things you could do. Do you see my point?
Yeah, yeah. So sorry, I know we also like over time. Like I think I agree.
I'm
So
sorry, I'm sorry.
I would I mean, I think both of those use cases can exist. I think running agents within the change of controller definitely also would be available. I think as I guess is what Antonio you mentioned, right? Because if you connect those agents to the MCP tools, like access to Kubernetes compute, access to queue, right, access to other resources you run, it can like it can reason much better, right? It can understand what it needs to do to ensure the change jobs are properly scheduled, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing just to mention, for example, to get the resource, it could even look at for example, for a custom trainer, it could actually look at the training loop, and I think it would do
Yeah.
it would be able to do a great job at actually inferring the so some range of computer resources based on looking up at the model, the train look itself.
Yeah. Like this is what I was thinking about, because if I have the entire training loop within the container arcs, we can just pass it to the
Yeah,
context and
exactly. Yeah,
let
absolutely.
model decide. Um, yeah. So let's. I think as the next steps, I think we need to again have something, as you said, like I think Vasily, it's like very easy to use, right? And some kind of like short-term deliverables we can do, right? I know maybe what are your thoughts? Like, do you want to, convert your PyTorch integration to the train job integration, or you want to build this kind of extensible architecture in a way how we can extend it to support kind of more complex use cases? What do you think? Um,
Yes, yes. I think let's finish the cap, and then I can just contribute my plugin for this architecture, right? I can just convert it to work with this and see how this looks, like as a test, if you will.
yeah, it makes sense. And the model that you run, it's running locally, right, in the cluster, or like how do you run
Yeah,
it?
yeah. It's very simple. Like you don't even need a GPU to run the model. It's like a
Mm,
small a
okay.
small auto glue on tabular. I don't remember the exact name, but it's like a
Okay.
CSV model, if you will.
Okay, makes sense, makes sense. I think integrating eventually agentic systems within change of control would be interesting. I think, we need to understand, what kind of modification those agents can do to enhance the job submission, right? Like, on the controller side, basically. Because I guess like it can do much more than just a resource assignment if you think about, long term. Yeah, but I think having these building blocks, we need to first of all integrate them, right? And build those building blocks within the framework, right? Um, and then extend it. Yeah. Any other thoughts like on this? I know that it depends on the work that ROPU is doing, and we didn't get a chance to talk about the runtime mutability. I know you have the open proposal for this, right? Um, so maybe like as a follow-up, we can also review this your cap, right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine by me. The cap is relatively short anyway, and I think the solution
Hmm.
sort of. I think if we're looking at it more as a patch, a runtime patch, that sort of answers the questions I think I had. So yeah, happy to
Okay.
follow up offline.
Yeah, let's have a little because I think will dependency on this work as well, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. So we've like 10 minutes over time. Any other questions? Maybe comments on this? Like any other thoughts on the proposal?
Can I just comment for
Yeah, good.
this CAPS 3328? So I guess possibly this might reduce cluster GPU usability rate because um, even Q or Cube scheduler try to schedule pods into the cluster as packed as possible. But if this plugin system so select the minimum GPU or resource size, the preemption or eviction cannot contribute to the entire cluster usage. I guess this is another point for this feature. So the um so I mean in the next meeting or in this cap, so I wanna talk I want to discuss how to mitigate the problem by this feature. I mean, even after we introduce this feature, I wanna avoid low cluster usabilities. This is just a comment.
Yeah, actually, it's a good
Policy dependent, but I see what you mean. I think it's very policy dependent. If you can leave me a comment, I'll reply to you.
Yeah, I think we have because we're gonna have two systems like Q and those systems to decide on the resource management. And I guess it can overlap between each other, right? Because Q is actually by design to ensure you have appropriate bin packing, right? And resource utilization on your cluster. So if you introduce another
Yes.
system, yeah, it can conflict, right? Mhm.
Yes, even Q or Cube Scheduler try to maximize the Q cluster usage by quarter or preemption, evictions, or some of scheduling mechanism. The question is, will we introduce such cluster optimization mechanism to this functionality or just application point of
Yeah,
view?
also like one of the ideas, or like one of the idea, because this is done, like this should be done before job is submitted and submitted by Q. So I know we didn't get a chance to talk about the like diagram that Vasily has around Q, but because the job is submitted, actually you could think about job is submitted without any resources, and then this algorithm is deciding how many GPUs it requires to be scheduled, right? And then queue or kube scheduler will make a decision where to place it. Because from my understanding, queue is not assigning resources, right? Queue is that just deciding when to dispatch, right? The workload.
Actually, deciding resource requirement and flavor preference by topology or scheduling.
Why task, right? Yeah, task might be an issue. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't say strong objections. I don't say strong objection to this feature, but I want to consider how to resolve such conflicts between scheduling mechanism and this resource recommendation mechanism. Yeah, thank you. Just a comment.
Yeah, thanks again for this cap. I think this is great. I think this had a lot of potential overall. I think as we discussed, let's try to follow up with the comments and see, like what we can do for the short term, and expand this proposal to, again, as Antonio mentioned, support more kind of agentic systems. And then we have a lot of opportunities there. But defining the like the layer how those plugins can talk to controller and to the change job is something we need to focus first, right?
Yeah, and I apologize for taking over the meeting. I really didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Everything's good. All right. Any other last questions, comments from folks? All right. Thanks around for your time. I guess that's follow up. Let's follow up for the caps, and like we definitely have a lot of things to do. So definitely, like, let's discuss more, and let's see what we can deliver for 2.3, and before the next KubeCon. So like a lot of things coming in. Thanks around for your time. Really appreciate it. See you soon.
See you. See you.